What's up everyone? In this video, I'll be going over the CPU cooler testing that I'll be using on the channel going forward. Now I'll be referring back to this video in all the CPU cooler reviews, just to try and keep the reviews as short as possible. And I already have a handful of CPU coolers that I'll be reviewing, but if there are any coolers that you'd like me to take a look at, please leave it down in the comments. Now before I get too far into this, I wanted to explain that my CPU testing is not going to be comparable with other channels or websites, and that's because the hardware is not the same, the testing is not the same, and the test conditions are not going to be the same. So please just keep that in mind. Now with that out of the way, there is a lot to go over, so let's get started. I did buy a whole new system just for testing CPU coolers, so if you guys could help me out by liking, sharing, and subscribing, that would be awesome. The motherboard is the MSI B550 Tomahawk. The GPU is a GT1030 with a passive cooler. The OS drive is an M.2 nvme drive. The power supply is a Corsair RM550x. The RAM is 4 8GB DIMMs of Gskill FlareX running at 3200. The case or the frame is a QDIY Cool 5 open frame case. I also bought a large amount of thermal paste, which should be enough for around 30 coolers or so, give or take. And after that, I'll have to figure something else out. Now for the CPU or CPUs, I'll be using the Ryzen 5 3600 and the Ryzen 9 3900 XT. I will be using these CPUs and only these CPUs for all my testing. Now for the testing, I'll be running 2 sets of tests for each CPU. The first one will have the fan or fans running at full speed. The second will have the fan or fans running at 35 dBA. Now, if it's an AIO being tested, the pump will always be running at full speed, and all sound level readings will be taken 20 inches or 51 centimeters from the test system. I will always start the testing using the 3600. The testing will have the package on the 3600 running at 87 watts. I'll be running 2 tests at full speed and 2 tests at 35 dBA. The length of the tests will depend on the cooler and how long it takes the CPU to reach a steady state. After those 4 tests, I'll remove the cooler and clean everything up. Then I'll repaste and reinstall the cooler and repeat the tests. Now I'm doing this to double check the mounting and pasting of the cooler onto the IHS. I'm going to be using hardware info to record all the system data. The readings will be taken every second. I will also be taking room temperature readings using my digital thermometer. Once the 8 tests are completed, I will manually go through the data to verify it. Now, if there is something that doesn't line up, I'll remove the cooler, clean everything up, and then reinstall the cooler and repeat the tests. But if everything looks good and I think the cooler can actually handle it, I'll move on to the 3900 XT. Now this testing will have the package on the 3900 XT running at 150 watts, which is kind of why I have to make a judgment call on if the cooler can handle it or not. Once I finished all the testing, I'll be splitting everything into 4 charts. The 3600 at 35 dBA, the 3600 at full speed, the 3900 XT at 35 dBA, and the 3900 XT at full speed. Now the way I'll be getting all those numbers is from the verified tests. I'll be taking 5 minutes of data after the CPU reaches steady state. Steady state meaning the CPU temperature is no longer increasing. Now there will be some minor fluctuations, something around plus minus 0.1 to 0.2 Celsius, but the temperature will no longer be actively increasing. I will then be modifying the temperatures to reflect a 22 Celsius room temperature. Then I'll be averaging them all together, giving us the average CPU temperature from 1200 cells of data. Now I am attempting to get something to indicate the cold plate connection with the IHS, but a 1x1 sheet of what I'm looking at costs 100 Canadian dollars. And there's a 3-foot minimum, so that would be blowing my budget for the next 4 months or so just on that film. It's a really cool idea, but I'm not sure if I can actually swing that. Now what I'm looking at is the same as what the guys over at Gamers Nexus are using. Now they're doing a little bit more in the back end, but it's pretty much the same. Now going forward, I am hoping to get out a cooler review every month, as well as still trying to get out a case review every month. I've almost finished the fan testing, so I'm hoping to kind of start pushing those out. I'm not sure how often I'll be pushing those out, but they'll be coming very soon. And I think that's all I got for this one. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're still watching, please hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified whenever I drop a new video. Please follow me on Twitter at HFG_YT. I also have a Discord server. It's a great place to get a hold of me if you do need some sort of help. And as always, thank you for watching and see you next time.